7th GP in 2013, the Drivers' Championship is over, unless the German does not finish a few races. Basically, he's won his 4th title. He is now 60 points ahead of Fernando Alonso, who is clinging on, but realistically doesn't have the car to challenge the Red Bull. Lewis Hamilton battled hard in Singapore, but he will now be thinking about the new turbocharged era next year, as his chances of being champion in 2013 are just about gone. He is on 151 points, just 2 ahead of the determined Kimi Räikkönen. Mark Webber's DNF means that Nico Rosberg's closing the gap on the Australian and is now just 14 points behind. Felipe Massa impressed under the lights and is on 87 points, 30 ahead of a disappointed Romain Grosjean. Sitting in 9th place is Jenson Button, who has squeezed as much as he could out of an underperforming McLaren car. Paul di Resta has slipped to 18 points behind the Brit, his teammate 10 behind him. To the back end of the grid, where Sergio Perez is fighting to hold on to his seat at McLaren and is on 22 points. Nico Hülkenberg edges up to 19 points. Daniel Ricciardo, Jean-Eric Verne and Pastor Maldonado all failed to add to their tally in Singapore. In the Constructors' Championship, the Bull has bolted, and it is seeing red. Even with Mark Webber not finishing in Singapore, they are still way ahead thanks to Vettel's win. They lead Ferrari by 103 points. Mercedes stay ahead of Lotus, who are a massive 130 points ahead of a slightly improving McLaren. Force India slipped back after di Resta failed to finish for the 3rd straight race. Toro Rosso stay ahead of Sauber, and for Williams, more disappointment, missing out on the points in Singapore. With the release of the Ron Howard movie Rush this year, F1 is back on the big screen. The movie is based around the relationship and rivalry in the 70s between the charismatic Englishman James Hunt and the cool Austrian Niki Lauda. The James Hunt Files tells the story of how Hunt rose so rapidly to become world champion, and how he faded almost as fast.
And James Hunt goes on to take the World Racing Drivers' Championship.
When we last opened the James Hunt Files, the British playboy had just won his home GP, so naturally he was on a high. Little did he know that the race would be taken off him 2 months later.
Just beating Niki Lauda to the line, the young Englishman wins the British Grand Prix and shows his pleasure in traditional fashion.
Tensions were high after Ferrari protested against the McLaren driver for taking an access road back to the pits before a restart of the race. Round 10 of the 1976 season took the drivers to Germany and one of the most notorious tracks on the F1 circuit, the Nürburgring. Labeled the Green Hell by 3-time world champion Jackie Stewart, at almost 23 kilometers, it was by far the longest circuit on the calendar. And because it was built in the Eifel Mountains, it had over 300 meters of elevation change. It was impossible to make safe. Niki Lauda was not impressed by the safety conditions of this monstrous German circuit and wanted a boycott of the race. The drivers voted against him and the GP went ahead.
At this stage, Austrian Niki Lauda was well in front in the race to be world champion with 58 points. James Hunt had 35 points and Jody Scheckter followed 3rd with 28. But on this, the most dangerous of all Grand Prix courses, notorious among drivers, disaster waited among the bends. Niki Lauda lost control of his Ferrari on a 150-mile-an-hour curve. Brett Lunger hit it a glancing blow with his Surtees, and it in turn collided with Oettls Hesketh. The race was restarted, but for Lauda, it was a race for life. While his fellow drivers jockeyed for position, he was being rushed to an intensive care unit with severe burns, fractures and lung damage. Surgeons pronounced he was near to death, and last rites were administered. But it was James Hunt who crossed the finish line first. The German Grand Prix win took the Englishman to a total of 44 points, only 14 behind Lauda, who could provide no further competition. Hunt was ahead.
Next week on the Hunt Files, Niki Lauda makes a remarkable comeback, and the race for the 1976 Drivers' Championship is back on.
Just 40 days after doctors had given up hope and a priest had knelt at his bedside, the Austrian ace climbed back into the cockpit of his glaring red Ferrari. Niki Lauda was the toast of international motorsport.
With the European leg of the Formula One season behind us, all F1 teams face new logistical challenges. Time differences is one issue that Romain Grosjean has learned to manage.
Yeah, Singapore, I stay in the European mode. Not fully, to be honest, because then it means that you go bed by 5 in the morning, and that's quite late for me. I need to sleep a lot, so I try to do something maybe in between.
It's obviously a rush in terms of logistics. We end the European season, so we had to bring back everything here to inspect and maintain the cars. In the same time, we have a second team preparing sea freight, air freight, late air freight, and very, very late freight to make sure everything is in place when the team will be arriving in Singapore, but also in terms of cars and development for the cars.
Every GP requires modifications to the cars to remain competitive.
We'll be putting more wing on it, so the aero package will change for Singapore because it's a completely different race with being a street circuit. We're not coming back to base now for the next couple of months, so the guys need to make sure they've got everything they want.
To the flyway races is about 70 to 75 people. They're all staggered. You start with the catering, then we have the support crew, the setup crew, the mechanics, engineers, and then marketing. So they all kind of come and go at different times as well.
The biggest logistical challenge is moving tens of thousands of kilos of freight around the world and on schedule.
The main freight, as we call it, goes on Friday, which is the 11 pallets, the 34,000 kilos. So, for instance, when the freight leaves here on Friday, our slot at East Midlands at the DHL depot is 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we'll be there an hour before. Trucks will be checked. The Level D security known shipper helps us get the freight through nice and promptly. On the back of that, we have what's called late freight. Obviously, F1 is constantly changing, there's constant updates, there's more and more equipment coming out, so we can't actually put a finite finish on it. So, for instance, we know that if the freight leaves Sunday, we have it in Singapore 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning, which allows us to plan, because as F1, as many businesses, it's all about planning and knowing. There's no point having stuff coming out too late if you can't fit it on the car to run in the first session.
In the lead-up to Singapore, Kimi Räikkönen felt confident heading into the race.
I expect when we go back to kind of normal downforce level circuits in Singapore, we should be much more stronger, and hopefully we get back in the positions that we've been lately in the races. So hopefully it's much better than we've been lately.
Kimi's third place in Singapore was a step in the right direction for Lotus. Strap yourself in, because after the break, David Coulthard takes it up a gear in